exceptional.
The Cincinnati Reds are off to their best start in over a decade. So we have to ask the question, how are you feeling about this team? It's vibe check time. We're going to talk about it on today's live Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yeah, muted. You are Locked On Reds, and my name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. This is my 6th season doing the podcast. This is Steve's 3rd season with me as well, and he was podcasting before that too. We talked about this Reds for a long time, this Reds team, and this is the best that they have started a season since either of us have been podcasting. So I'm curious about how you feel. Jump in our comment section here as we are live on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon before the Reds welcome the Baltimore Orioles to town. We are going to go over that series here in a little bit, some matchups to take into account, keep an eye on. A breakout player, if you will, I think the Reds will have this weekend. We're also going to look at who is the most responsible, the biggest contributor to the Reds' success so far this year, and who might be holding the team back just a little bit. That's coming up in a few minutes, and we're going to start, though, of course, with just how good this Reds team has been. It's been a phenomenal start. I mean, we continually say best start since 2013, and really when you look at what the Reds have done, Steve, I think it's interesting to note how they've done it and with what they've really not had to this point, because this Reds team, we were expecting a certain version of it, a certain roster of it, and they haven't quite shown it just yet. Of course, before we really dive into it, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, Steve. Good start, or are you concerned with how the Reds are playing right now?
Well, I mean, can both things be true? I am concerned with how they're playing right now, but here's the thing. Before all the injuries and suspensions and everything went sideways there at the end of spring training, you and I, if someone had said, well, do you expect the Reds to have their best start in over a decade? You and I would have been like, absolutely, 100%. Yes, they're going to have one of their best starts that they've had in a long, long time. This will be the best beginning to a season that we've had. That's what we would have said. Then everything went sideways. People were throwing buckets of cold water on us and our optimism. And yet here we are heading into May with the best April in over a decade. A team that's done it with bubble gum and Band-Aids, and a team that has reinforcements coming. See Mr. TJ Friedel's Louisville debut yesterday. And you start to put these pieces together, and it's very easy to kind of land in a spot of, well, they're not as good as I had hoped they were going to be. We know why that is. Help is coming. This team can still make the playoffs.
Well, and it's crazy to think that, I mean, they're 16-15, and they're in 3rd place in the NL Central right now. They're only a couple of games back. We're not talking about a huge deficit that they've dug themselves into. And they're going into this gauntlet where you and I have both said, just be 500. That's all you need to be. We don't need you to go crazy here. And they've done it without their lineup, basically. I mean, outside of Ellie de la Cruz and Spencer Steer, it's been, Jamer Candelario's had one game that he's been good in. Christian Encarnacion Strand has hit like 2 home runs, and Tyler Stevenson's hitting the ball hard, but he's got a low BABIP and things like that. This team, Steve, and I don't think people realize this, they're 16-15 with their best start in 11 years, and we're going to keep saying that because that's what it is. They are last in the National League, a league that includes the Colorado Rockies and Miami Marlins, last in the National League in batting average, and they're still over 500. If you'd have told me that, I'd have said there ain't no way this team's over 500 if they've got the worst batting average in the National League. But that's just how good the pitching has been.
Yeah, this has been a pitching-driven situation, and the pitching is improving. Last 2 times out, Hunter Green, who's going tonight, correct? Hunter Green tonight.
Yes, Hunter Green tonight.
Hunter Green, last 2 times out, 7 innings in both starts, much more pitch efficient, much more of a pitcher than a thrower. I'm very, very interested to see how he fares against this Orioles lineup tonight. If he's that guy again, if he gives them 6 or 7 innings of
feel good about that.
2, 3. I mean, you got to feel great about that.
Yeah.
And then what we've seen from Nick Lodolo so far, who's also going in this series, he has looked like the ace we've said he was going to be thus far. He's 3-0. He's been great every time out. The pitching, you are absolutely right, Jeff, has carried this team. And it's not just the starters. While they've been frustrating at times, this improved bullpen has been exactly that. They've come into big situations, absent, Fernando Cruz's meltdown not included, and that's your fault. And you know what he did. That's your fault.
I have been told, by the way, if I somehow became the most pessimistic Reds fan in the world, then the Reds would win the World Series, because whenever we talk bad about players, they go off, and when we talk good about players, they blow up. So
that grand slam was your fault, but the bullpen has been good as well. This is my point. So as this pitching continues, basically, if it just holds what it's been doing for the most part, as this offensive stuff resolves itself, as TJ Friedel comes back, as Noelvi Marte becomes eligible, as maybe they make a roster move, we're still waiting on word if they're going to DFA somebody like Martini and bring up Mike Ford. We don't know, but if they make
continues,
right, if they make a move for one of these guys that's clearly been struggling, you're still improving, right. And that's what they've got to do. You and I have talked about get through May, survive May, be 500. If they're a few games under 500, that's not the end of the world. What they can't do is just get swept. They've got to take games, win a couple series, at least win 1 game each series, survive this gauntlet of May, get your real team in place heading into June and July, and then make a run. And they're still poised to do that. They're primed to do that. So, if we're calling this vibe check season, Jeff, I'm still cautiously optimistic about where this team is and who this team is. I am nowhere near ready to say, they're not going to win any. They're going to get swept. I'm nowhere ready to say that they're not a potential playoff team. Nowhere close to am I to saying any of those things. We don't know who they are yet, but we know that even this banged up version of them is able to win baseball games.
I would say this too, and I'd be curious of the comments section what you all think, that my optimism has not wavered on this team, and I don't think my expectations have changed either. I've heard some folks say that they have changed their thinking on this team. They've changed their expectations. It is certainly far too early to do that. This isn't really even the first real checkpoint. I just thought, hey, over 31 games, so a month worth of games, just had an off day, heading into a homestand. Where are we feeling? How are we looking at this team right now? I'm still feeling pretty bullish about it, because you're talking about a lineup that has struggled. It's had Christian Encarnacion strand, but CES has not been his best. In fact, you could argue he's been his worst. Jeimer Candelario has been his worst. You've had a lot of illness and offhand injuries that don't require IL stints, as much as we hate talking about those, but those guys are back now. This lineup that is running out there today is the lineup that we expected, sans Matt McClain, TJ Friedel, and Noelvi Marte. They didn't have that for the entire San Diego series. They didn't have that for the final game in Texas. and yet they still somehow didn't lose all 4 of those games. So I am still very bullish on their chances, and I'm looking forward to a lot of guys really starting to break out here as the month turns to May. And yes, they have a gauntlet coming up, but this is the point in the year where everybody's bat speed really starts to catch up with where the pitchers are, because pitchers always start the season with an advantage. Just ask any former major leaguer. It takes you a minute to get into that groove. Now guys are really starting to get into that groove. And what's it look like for this team? I think this team is going to be fine, and they're going to hit that June and July stretch where they're playing a lot of division games, and you can really make a run at the top of this division in the middle of the summer. I think they're going to be cooking with gas at that point.
And we should mention, you talk about this as not a natural checkpoint, but you've kind of set it up to be a checkpoint for us
A little bit, yeah.
Throughout the season, because I think one and only of our bold predictions from the offseason that still is in play was you saying the Reds would be 500 or better in every month of the season. So
this is the month that I'm the most worried about that prediction.
And you should be. The way the situation is right now, this is going to be the hardest month for you to remain alive. But thus far, if I guess you count March as its own month, I don't know, but they were 500.
Let me tell you, if they had lost that game, everybody would have counted it against me. So yes.
and then for April, you're on track. You're above 500. So Jeff's bold prediction watch remains alive.
Well, I know this, Steve. There's definitely been some key contributors, some guys that have really helped the success of this ball club, and there's been a couple of guys that you could argue are holding them back. There's 2 obvious guys that we got to discuss, though, between Ellie de la Cruz and Spencer Steer as the biggest hero of this team. That is coming up right after this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has the daily sports solution for you. You should check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, because it brings you all of the biggest stories in sports, opinions, takes, analysis, all that great stuff every single day. Brought to you by our Locked On hosts, including myself and Steve and lots of great other local folks, as well as national shows. We got you covered every single day. Subscribe to the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 feed on YouTube or check it out on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And for our everydayers out there, shout out to you guys, by the way, for joining us here on this Locked On Reds live show. If you are not an everydayer and you are just checking out our live show today, hi, welcome in. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you comment down in the comments section. Let us know any old thing. How you feeling about the Reds? How you feeling about the best player on the Reds so far this season? Because it's a debate, which I love. I think for years, for the longest time, the obvious answer was Joey Votto. And now we're looking at this, and the Reds core really has a couple of guys on any given year that could be the best player on the team. But as it stands so far this season, Steve, we've got Ellie and we've got Spencer Steer. You know who my pick is. Who's your pick?
It's hard not to pick Ellie right now. I mean, if you'd asked me to make the pick between the two at the beginning of the season, I'd have said Spencer Steer. In fact, I said Spencer Steer is the most important player on this team. He may not ever win an MVP, but he's the most important player on this team just on his consistency and his flexibility. But the way Ellie has been playing has really carried this team and has really kind of been the spark that has kept this team going. I called it bubblegum and Band-Aids. That's a big part of what Ellie de la Cruz has done. He's been that bridge guy. He has been that that Band-Aid guy to carry things. So for me, offensively, if we're talking about position players, because I have a different answer for pitchers, but position players wise, I would go with Ellie right now. You can't not pick Ellie the way he's been playing.
I would agree, and that would be my pick is Ellie De La Cruz, but I will say this, like, the Reds have a dynamic 1-2 punch with him and Spencer Steer. Ever since David Bell has moved Ellie up to the second spot in the order with Steer at the third spot, I have come to the conclusion that whether it's 2-3, whether Ellie hits 3 and Spencer Steer hits 4, whatever it is, I want Ellie, then Steer. Like, those two guys back to back, because Ellie does a fantastic job now with his plate discipline and his pitch recognition of getting on base, however that might be. He might lace a single into the outfield. He might smash a home run. He might just draw a walk. And especially if it's a base hit / walk scenario and he is on base, he creates so much havoc for the pitcher that the pitcher cannot focus on the fact that Spencer Steer is at the plate. And Spencer Steer is slowly becoming, not even slowly, maybe even fast becoming a very consistent hitter. We know exactly what we're getting out of him. That Ellie is the biggest reason why Spencer Steer leads the team in RBIs, but Steer will consistently be that RBI guy. Like, we've said it in the past, everydayers will know, and I've seen some everydayers also kind of make this comparison as well, that Spencer Steer is to this version of the Reds what Tony Perez was to the Big Red Machine. I'm not saying Spencer Steer is Tony Perez. Don't go crazy with that. Don't misquote me here. But I'm saying in this version of what the Cincinnati Reds are, that's who Spencer Steer is.
I think that's fair. I mean, Tony Perez was the non-flashy, consistent RBI guy, right? That's the guy who just came out there and did his thing every day. Spencer Steer is that. I can see that comparison. I think maybe an honorable mention here also, Jeff, although he's been streaky, Jonathan India has exceeded my expectations a lot this season. He's made some good defensive plays. Don't get it twisted. I'm not calling him a Gold Glover or anything, right, but he's made some good defensive plays.
He's looked better this year than he has.
He's gotten on base. His at-bats have looked good. His batting average didn't support it, but everything else did offensively. He was getting on base. He was drawing walks. He was looking at a lot of pitches. He was making pitchers work. He single-handedly won one of those Philadelphia games early in the season just by battling, right? Until he just wore out the pitcher. So, we've seen him produce those kind of at-bats. So while it's not on the level of Steer or Ellie De La Cruz, I just kind of want to honorable mention Jonathan India because he's played really well at times.
And really his last 9 games, he's turned it on ever since he returned from the flu or whatever illness it was that he had there. His last 9 games, he has 11 hits. And not to go too crazy,
that's where I pulled him aside in Texas. I told him, "Look, Johnny, here's what you got to do." I gave him a couple tips while I was down there. I'm glad he ran with them.
Like that Saturday game was him and Hunter Green just leading the team to victory. I mean, it helps that other guys were on base for India to drive home, but India goes 4 for 4.
4 for 4. Yep. 4 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a home run. That's right.
It's a fantastic game for him. And that really kind of got him going. I think he will continue to be better. I actually had a friend tell me the other day, he was just like, I think by mid-May, India's going to be hitting 250. And this was back whenever he was hitting 150. So my buddy Matt is looking pretty good with that. On the pitching side, let's do that real quick before we jump into, who's kind of holding the team back a little bit. For me, it's really, really hard to pick against Nick Lodolo. And I think that, this rotation.
Well, that's because he's the answer. That's the answer.
Yeah. He's only pitched 4 games and people are going to say, well, it's only 4 games. The Reds have won all 4 of those games. And even in his worst start, he still held the Phillies to 3 runs. And every other start has been absolutely fantastic. And I think with him coming back, it has somehow stabilized this rotation, even with the loss of Frankie Montas for the last 2 starts.
Sorry, there was something in the comments section that wants me to fight, but I can't do it. Here's the thing with Nick Lodolo, it's going to be easy for people to be like, but yeah, he hasn't been here since the start of the season. We've only seen the 4 starts, as you say. the answer is Nick Lodolo. Just watch the starts. You just have to watch him pitch to see that he is dialed in and grooving, and he is the guy right now. If Hunter Green is considered second on that list, I don't know. He's been so. Ask me again next week after we see how he looks against this Orioles lineup. Because if Hunter again comes out and gives 6 or 7 innings with only a couple hits, a run or two, if he's the guy he has been his last 2 starts, then this question becomes more difficult in my mind. Because if we're going to say that Nick Lodolo's 4 starts earns him the ranking of the best pitcher on the team, then if Hunter Green gives me that 3rd start tonight that looks like what the last 2 have looked like, it's a 1A, 1B conversation, I think.
Let's continue this conversation because I got something for you on the Hunter Green front that I think will surprise you, and I think it'll surprise you watching as well. That's Steve hates Hunter Green. Grant's got it right there. But let's continue that, and we'll also look at some players that need to pick it up a little bit and talk about some matchups and take some Q&A here in just a moment. Baseball season is nearing the first big checkpoint of the year, and you are going to want to add all of your favorite baseball players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this baseball season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $100 with just a few taps. PrizePicks is simply the easiest to play that there is. I can make my picks and submit my entries in less than 60 seconds. Seriously, it's that easy. Plus, they have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, and it makes it the #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks is the best way to go this season, and the best way to turn your cash into even more cash is just find Ellie De La Cruz stats and click more on those. Really, it's that easy. Pick a stat, pick more on Ellie De La Cruz. There you go. You'll thank me later. So get in on the action with PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB for a $100 match, up to $100 match on your first deposit. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. And we've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's the bottom of the 9th, and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low. Not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you got to dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game and pull off some bank heist and take as much of my friends' money as possible. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends and get more riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, or you can charge other players rent on your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in community tournaments and get extra rewards to climb that leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Also, check out some written content about the Cincinnati Reds. I'm kind of doing a little bit of vibe check per player over at si.com/MLB/Reds. So go check that out there for some written content about your Cincinnati Reds.
So real quick, because I can't resist, and maybe Willie's screwing with me in the comment section, but I can't resist this kind of stuff, Jeff. Willie says, don't ever put Steer and Perez in the same sentence. Perez is a Hall of Famer, just so you know. Tony Perez, through his career, averaged 3.1 WAR per season. Spencer Steer has 3 per season. He's right on pace with Tony Perez. So, yeah, he's got to play a little bit longer. We'll see. By the way, Tony Perez was a borderline Hall of Famer that played on a phenomenal team. He only had 45 career WAR for the Reds. You know, if that's the hill you want to die on, cool. But
well, and that's
yeah,
the reason.
he was
Like, I mean,
borderline.
that's the whole like debate of how important is the RBI stat. Like, guys got to be on base for you to get RBIs,
Right.
and you got to get hits to get RBIs as well. But there's a little bit of that's not up to the player; it's up to the rest of the team. But yeah, no, I mean that's why I said I'm just like it's the version of him. I'm not saying Spencer Steer is Tony Perez. I would never go and do that for people like Willie. All right, let's talk about this because Hunter Green, and you mentioned like, yeah, is he good? I don't know if he's good or not. I'm looking for one more start. Did you know, Steve, that if you don't look at the ERA stat, these first 6 starts are better than last year's first 6 starts. In fact, his batting average against, his on-base percentage against, his slugging percentage against, his walk rate, all of it is lower than it was last year. And his FIP, his fielding independent pitching, which is supposed to be a little bit more of a predictor of what he should be like. Number one, it's almost as low. Nick Lodolo's is still lower, but it's 2.94 is his FIP. So it's saying he's getting slightly unlucky with his ERA. And I think that will only continue as he comes along. You know, he gets his fastball command and his confidence in his fastball and stuff like that going, and as he builds that third pitch.
Well, that kind of checks out, right? When we've been talking about his starts, it's not been, God, he's been getting tattooed. That's not really ever been the conversation. The talking points have been he's not pitch efficient. He only managed to go X number of innings. He had 100
Which he
pitches
is averaging
by the
more
end of
innings per start as well.
Right. And he is. And I think, but that includes the last 2 7-inning starts, right? Where he's figured it out a little bit. So those early starts, though, he labored at times. And I think for me, and where just everybody's like suddenly, you know, thinking I'm rejoicing when he has a bad start, which is the farthest thing from the truth.
I think you just have to go to his games now because, like, you were there on Saturday in Texas, and he pitched well. I think he saw you in the stands. He's like, I gotta go.
He clearly didn't want to hear it from me. No, I'm the answer. The talking points for me, Jeff, have always been like, because the Reds and because you and I and because all of the Cincinnati media by and large have all put this crown on Hunter Green, this expectation of being the next coming of Cy Young. You know, we did that to him.
Yeah.
And it's clearly always was going to be a bar that he couldn't live up to no matter what he did. And so some of the narrative, some of the dissection of his starts thus far have been looking at him through the lens of the ace of the rotation. And, you know, he never said he was the ace of the rotation. He didn't come right out and say that. We said that. So, you know, we put some unfair expectations on him, and we are evaluating through that lens. That's probably unfair. But the fact remains that he has that kind of talent, right? Like he can be that ace. He can be that guy. And we're watching for him to turn a corner. So when I say I want to see that third start, you know, if the start today looks like those other two, I feel much more comfortable talking about this two-headed, you know, ace monster that's being created, which is kind of what we've all been waiting for, right? Lodolo Green, right. Lodolo Green. That's what we've been waiting for. If those guys are both hitting at the same time, both on fire, both throwing 7-inning starts back to back, boom, boom, boom. That's a big deal for this team. That's the kind of thing that will help carry this team until reinforcements come for the offense.
Everydayers will know that will be a throwback to discussions we had in the offseason between 2022 and 2023, talking about a two-headed monster at the top of the Reds rotation. Real quick, too, before we jump into comments and stuff like that and the matchups here with the Orioles, a couple of guys that are just really holding the Reds back. I've mentioned it, and I think that they will. I still think that there are signs that Jeimer Candelario and CES are headed for a breakout, but you cannot deny that the performances they put up so far have been lacking. And that's been a big reason why this lineup is so down, because we talked about CES being one of the best hitters in this lineup preseason. And we talked about Candelario being more of a, not necessarily one of the best hitters, but one of a constant force in the middle somewhere in the lineup. I always thought like around 5th or 6th in the lineup. For much of the first couple of weeks of the season, these guys were 3-4. in the lineup, and that was a big reason why this lineup has been so inconsistent. Even though it's funny too, Steve, because the weirdness of this team is they actually are ninth in Major League Baseball in runs per game, despite their low batting average. So it's like they still score because of really good base running. It's just they haven't been consistent enough with the bat. And I kind of put the focus squarely on Candelario and on CES because they were supposed to be two linchpins to this lineup.
Well, and you mentioned those two guys, and you alluded to this earlier with what the lineup looks today. So let's start jumping into the comments here a little bit. Cameron's asking, when does the lineup get released? It is out. The lineup that Jeff was referencing earlier to line up for tonight has Jonathan India leading off and playing DH, Ellie De La Cruz batting second at short, Spencer Steer third and left, Tyler Stevenson's batting cleanup and catching, Christian Encarnacion Strand fifth, first base, Jamer Candelario sixth, third base, Santiago Espinal is batting seventh, playing second base, Jake Fraley is batting eighth, playing right field, and Stuart Fairchild playing center field and batting in the 9 holes under green, starting for the Reds tonight. That's probably one of the better lineups they can put together right now with who's on the active roster. I mean,
yeah, they're just missing Will Benson. They got a lefty on the mound. I mean, you can explain that as a reasoning as to why Benson's out of the lineup. I do love too that David Bell is sticking with Ellie De La Cruz in the 2-hole against a lefty here, and he's kind of following along with what I said. Make it a 1-2 punch. I don't care who's on the mound. I don't care what's going on here. Ellie and Steer need to go with some version of Ellie and then Spencer Steer, whether it's second, third, fourth, wherever it is, and it should be higher up in the lineup too, as well. As like I love where they're sitting at, and I love that he is kind of rewarding Jonathan India a little bit for breaking out here over the last week.
Cameron follows up with this, and I'd like to get your thoughts too. He says, not a bad lineup. Fraley is too low. I like where Fraley is right now. I like that they put him down there in the bottom. He needs an opportunity to get it going. He's been struggling a bit, both, I think, physically, just trying to recover from that illness. He had bronchitis. He's been battling, and that kind of a physical thing and still trying to play professional baseball at a high level, I think causes a mental strain as well. And he needs a great big reset button. He needs to get in there with not a lot of expectation, not a lot of pressure, have himself a game or two, and then we can talk about, well, he should be higher up in the lineup. I like him down there in kind of the pressure-free zone.
I could maybe make an argument that you flip him with Santiago Espinal, but that's like really splitting hairs here. And there's the off chance too that Espinal actually gets on base and then Fraley can bring him around to score. Fraley's had an interesting season. Like when you look at his batting average, you're pretty happy with it. But when you look at his slugging percentage, you're like, he's not quite there yet. And we talked about him on Wednesday for our first installment of the Worryometer. And the reason that I'm slightly worried about him is that he's gone through so much with the illness and different things like that. And he isn't quite hitting the ball very hard, still very low on the average exit velocity. That can tick up as his bat speeds up through the season. But I do kind of have like one eye on the fact that not everything is adding up to the performance that he has with his batting average. Like to see him kind of get back into it. Maybe he has that, the post-illness breakout that Jonathan India has enjoyed here recently.
All right, before we move into the next one, if everybody that's watching, we appreciate you guys being here, joining us on this impromptu live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast as we get ready to take on the Baltimore Orioles, which is going to be a fun series. I appreciate you guys being here. If you're here right now watching, click that like button. Help us boost this puppy out to the masses. We do this because we love talking baseball with you, and we want to talk baseball, talk Cincinnati Reds with as many people as possible. So click that like button right now for me. If you haven't subscribed, click that subscribe button, notification bell, so that you know when we're live. We want you here with us as we're talking Reds baseball. Now, Jeff, before I dive back into this, do we need a break for you to split things, or are we just rolling right along?
Let's just roll right along here.
We'll roll right along. All right. Is Alex Blandino and the knuckleball still a work in progress? Joseph Gaditza is asking. And, I haven't heard a lot of updates on Alex Blandino. I know that he's still down there in Chattanooga trying to get it done. Nothing would make me happier than for him to be able to put that together and somehow find his way back to the major league roster at some point in time with a knuckle. That will not be this year. That is not going to happen. It's going to be seasons from now. He's going to have to work on that thing for years in the minor leagues. But if it were to happen, I would love it. What a great story that would be.
And I think, too, it'd be as like a reliever, probably, not even as a starter.
Yep.
So probably, I mean, best case scenario, we see him at the end of 2025. Because, I mean, you're talking about literally reinventing yourself, right? You're going from an infielder to a pitcher who throws a knuckleball. Like, most pitchers don't reinvent themselves as knuckleball pitchers. So it's going to be a very interesting thing to see how he progresses. But yeah, it's going to be a while before we really hear a lot about that.
Carrie says, glad to see Martini out. We haven't really, Jeff, we haven't dug in on this yet. It was very easy to get caught up in Martini mania, especially with just that name and how fun you could be with it and the happy hour stuff and all the stuff. It was easy. It was very easy to get sucked into that. And it was very easy for Martini to be that guy that Cincinnati loves, right? He fits the mold. Guy that comes out of nowhere, does something big in a big moment, 2 home runs on opening day, has a fun name, lets you be fun. And as a fan, he checked all the boxes that Cincinnati loves. The fact of the matter is he's not that good. I don't know how else to say it, Jeff. He's not.
He is a product of the injuries that the Reds suffered. Like if the Reds roster was healthy, 2 players would not be on the opening day roster, and that was Santiago Espinal and Nick Martini. The Reds would not have needed to trade for Santiago Espinal, and Nick Martini would be in AAA. Like he is probably a quadruple A guy. And I know that we have ascribed that term to Stuart Fairchild, but Stuart Fairchild is not the only one. I mean, we Reds fans have seen quite a few quadruple A guys over the last few years. And the nice thing is the only reason that guys like that are on the roster right now is because the roster is pinched so much. And yeah, it's a tough thing to see him in the lineup, but if everything's being equal, we wouldn't have seen Luke Maile every day for the last 4 days. We wouldn't have seen Nick Martini in the lineup for the last 4 days. We wouldn't have seen Santiago Espinal in the lineup for the last 4 days. But the Reds are in some dire straits between injuries and illness and all this other stuff. And the 2 crazy fluke hit by pitches on the hand of CES and Tyler Stevenson that they had to deal with. And that is why you saw these lineups that you looked at the lineup before the game started and you're like, really? Boy. And that's why we're feeling so much better about the lineup tonight.
So let me ask you this. We saw TJ Friedl begin his rehab assignment with the Louisville Bats. By all accounts, he looked great from the people that saw him live. I can't imagine they're going to leave him down there a long time. They're going to make sure he's ready, but they're not going to leave him there a long time.
Yeah.
I would say
it's probably 2 weeks, but yeah.
That's where I was going. I think we could see him realistically by the middle of this month. So within the next 2 weeks. That being said, is it Martini or is it Fairchild that he replaces? I think it's Martini.
It's Bubba Thompson.
You think so? I don't think it is. I think he replaces Nick Martini. I think you have to take into account the handedness. I think you're going to trade a lefty for a lefty, and you're going to get a lefty that can play in the field defensively and a lefty that can be in the lineup against right and left-handed pitchers. I think you're going to get Martini out of there. He has options. You're going to send him down. You'll keep Bubba Thompson, and Bubba Thompson is the next move. I think you keep Bubba Thompson and maintain your pinch runner luxury that you've got with him, because Martini's not doing anybody any favors being out there and playing right now. I think he's the move.
That's fair. The funny part is, like, Bubba Thompson, I was looking at this the other day. OPS plus is minus 22, which means he's 122% below a league average hitter, which we're not expecting him to hit, but he has more steals than he does total bases. He has 3 total bases. He has 5 steals because he's just a pinch runner at this point. And really, even his defense, I was looking at some of the Baseball Savant stuff about Bubba Thompson's defense. That's not even really backing up the assertion that he can be a defensive replacement late in a game. I think that it's possible, and we still haven't heard any news. We're waiting to hear about the Mike Ford saga and how does this all operate as he opted out
change
of
things.
his contract. I could see there being a 1-for-1 trade, Mike Ford up, Martini down, and then Bubba Thompson goes down for TJ Friedl. And the only thing with that is I get the lefty righty, like the handedness thing, and you kind of want to keep it that way. But TJ Friedl is a platoon buster. I trust those numbers to his point in this career. So I don't necessarily know that it's that big of a deal, but I think that Stuart Fairchild is safe, because then Stuart Fairchild becomes your fifth outfielder, and that is the role that I think any of us would have put him in at this point. Like the whole fourth outfielder thing right now is what had us with so much heartburn with him. Then he becomes your fifth outfielder, and you feel a lot better about that.
Right, because I mean, you have to put players in positions to be successful, right? And because of the roster makeup right now, Stuart Fairchild is not being put in the position
he's playing a lot more than he should
to be in. He's playing a lot more than he should, and he's playing against, he shouldn't be in there against right-handed pitchers. He shouldn't. So right now, through currently before tonight's game, he has 35 plate appearances against right-handed pitching, and he has 35 plate appearances against left-handed pitching, exactly evenly split. Okay. Here's the slash lines, Jeff. Right-handed pitchers, 063, 118, 156. In the same number of plate appearances against left-handed pitchers, the slash line is 323, 400, 355. You can keep running Stu out there for some at-bats against left-handed pitchers. I'm okay with that. He shouldn't see another right-handed pitcher the rest of the season.
I would agree with that. And I think it's funny too, because we constantly keep saying, and look, we're for once we're spouting realism. We love to spout optimism on our show, but we're spouting realism when it comes to Stuart Fairchild. Dude made catch of the year in San Diego. I defy anyone to make a better catch than Stuart Fairchild has. It's just when he grabs a bat, I'm a little bit worried. And yeah, I hope that pitcher is throwing with his left hand whenever Stuart Fairchild grabs a bat moving forward. But yeah, this is the kind of lineup that, we hope to see with the guys who are hurt. Will Benson, I think it's interesting because I feel like they've given him a pretty good shot against lefties so far this year.
Yeah.
And it's been a bit of a disappointment. If I'd say he's not been consistent, and I don't think we expected him to be.
Been? Are you disappointed? I mean, are you surprised? Disappointed is not correct. I'm sure you're disappointed. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised. I mean, he's hitting 148 against lefties, slugging 333. So, I mean, he's still got some extra base pop in there, but I mean, he's got 4 total hits and 32 plate appearances. So that's a tough thing for me, in that it's still a small sample size. You still have a hard time saying that you know who he is as a player against left-handed pitching. But I mean, now if we want to expand it out to his career, he's got 82 plate appearances in his career against lefties, and he has 10 total hits. So I think for me, Jeff, I'm not surprised at all. Am I disappointed? Sure. I'm not surprised at all that that's how he's hitting against lefties. If we're talking about Will Benson, though, where I'm surprised and disappointed all at the same time is how he's performing against right-handed pitchers. That slash line right now is 225, 279, 450. I needed him to be better against right-handers. The greatest number 9 hitter in baseball is not that slash line. I think he's going to pick it up too. I mean, he's a guy that I'm picking in this series to break out. Doesn't quite help that he's not in the starting lineup here for the first game, but he's a guy that I think that is going to start producing more. Right now he's only hitting 206 on the season, and that's not what we expect him to be by the end of the year. But I think that, he's been a little bit below what we expected. I think he's going to start reaching to that level here this weekend when it comes to, just what we expect out of him. I mean, he's looked good defensively so far this year, sure, in right field or center field. I've been very impressed with how he's picked up center field so far this season. I think it's just the bat hasn't quite sped up yet. He's one of those guys that I think that a breakout is coming.
Well, and that would be on brand, right? I mean, he was really, really bad in the month of April last year. Went down.
Worse than this.
Right. Went down, worked on some things, but got everyday playing time.
Yep.
Came back and was with it. So maybe he's, and I'm going to use Joey Votto as an example. I am not saying that he's going to be Joey Votto, but what I'm saying is, Votto always kind of started slow like that too. The month of April was usually a challenge. It was a warm-up period for Joey, and he would take off. Maybe Will Benson's one of those guys that is just going to have kind of a warm-up month every year and then take off. So let's see what May does. I'm by no means saying stop playing him. I'm not saying that.
No.
And I'd even still give him some at-bats against left-handed pitching, because if a guy's going to learn to hit left-handed pitching in the majors, he's got to face left-handed pitching in the majors. So
yeah,
until everybody's back and healthy, keep running Will Benson out there. I got no problem with that. Our buddy Josh checks in, and Josh is one of those dudes that hangs out over on the Discord server with us. If you haven't done that yet, it's in the show description, the link to the Discord community. Lots of great baseball talk over there and off-topic stuff, and David Bell David Bell questioning. We've got a section for that. So come check it out on the Discord server. Josh says Nick Lodolo makes him so happy every time his spot comes up in the rotation. He's so smooth out there. Josh says he knows it's early and he's not trying to jinx him, but could he be looking at a Cy Young campaign? Well, a lot of ifs in there, but if Lodolo keeps pitching every time out, like he's pitched these first 4 times out, I will say that he has started the season in well enough time to be in Cy Young conversations. He didn't start too late is what I'm saying. I'm with Josh. I don't want to jinx him, but he has been lights out. He's just money on the mound right now.
It's all about the control of that curveball. Like, that's the one pitch, and we saw it early in San Diego, and then Derek Johnson went out there and said the magic words, and then he figured it out, and he got his control back. But if he is locating the curveball where he wants to put it, he is very close to unhittable, because all of his other pitches play off that pitch. He can locate a fastball where, he's releasing it at the same point, looking like it's starting out the same way, and so then a hitter lays off of it because they think it's a curveball, and then he dots it in the zone for a strike. That's kind of his bread and butter, is how does he play the rest of his pitches off his curveball. And if his curveball's not playing up, if he doesn't have that control of it, he is a much less daunting pitcher. So he's got to have that control of that one pitch. So we'll see quickly on Sunday, whenever he pitches against the Orioles, how that looks.
Grant, don't you dare use Votto and Benson together. I love it. That is hilarious. Talking about Mike Ford for just a second. Our buddy Carrick, there was some question about Mike Ford being put on the injured list down in Louisville. And Carrick is saying that it's in fact the developmental list, not the injured list. This feels like a procedural move while they wait to make their decision. Carrick thinks it indicates he'll be called up. I wish they'd done it. Wish they'd done it before the series started, but okay.
I low-key thought we were going to hear something before they even released the lineup for today's game, and that's what kind of has me a little bit confused as to what's going on here, because there was a timeline where he opted out of his minor league deal, and the Reds had just a couple of days really to make a decision to either cut him or add him to the active roster, because he is a veteran. He has the ability to just elect free agency, and because he was hitting the cover off the ball at AAA, so someone might see that and pick him up and give him a shot. I think it would definitely be worth a shot to see if he's got it over Martini at this point. But yeah, like that, whatever it is that they're doing, there's probably a procedural thing that maybe extends that time a bit, but I don't think it wipes out his ability to opt out of a minor league deal.
It feels like a natural move to me, Jeff, right now. I don't like how Ford's kind of forcing the hand. Like,
if he's playing this well, he should.
But here's why it's a natural move,
or whatever.
Here's why it's a natural move, though. You can give Ford a look and not really give up anybody. Nick Martini has options remaining. At some point in time, he's getting sent down anyway. He's not performing right now at the major league level. So by bringing Ford up and sending Martini down, you don't lose Martini in the long run. You can get a look at what Ford can do at the major league level, and it can't be worse than what Nick Martini's doing right now.
Hey, and you want to know a fun fact about Mike Ford that I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but he hits lefties pretty well.
Oh, stop it. That was like a 2 plate appearance sample size you used for that crap, and I'm not doing it again. I'm not
pretty
doing
sure it
this
was like
again.
4 or 5. All right, put some respect.
I'm not doing this again with you, but I got no problem with I got no problem with them making this move. But if you're gonna do it. I like it's all right there in front of you. So get it over with. Let's stop talking about it. Either release him or call him up, but get it done. Let's go.
Yeah, and while you're looking at this, while you're looking at the comments and stuff here, I want to talk about this because this weekend with the Orioles in town, like you've got some interesting pitching matchups. You got our top 3 guys going on the mound. You have Cole Irvin, John Means, and I am blanking on who Sunday starter is for the Orioles, but none of them are Corbin Burns, thankfully enough. But it's not necessarily the pitching matchups that I'm interested in with the Orioles. It's Adley Rutschman. Because Adley Rutschman hits the cover off the ball. I mean, he is a big-time hitter when it comes...
Kramer on Sunday.
Oh, Dean Kramer. Okay, Dean Kramer on Sunday. So the pitching matchups are fine, but Adley Rutschman is the guy that I'm interested in. When he's at the plate, how do the Reds pitch him? But when he's behind the plate, are the Reds going to run? Because right now, StatCast doesn't really love what he has done. In fact, the statistic for catchers called caught stealing above average actually has him below.
Is that real
right now? Oh, according to baseball.
Is that a real number? Is that that sounds like something somebody made up for an arbitration hearing. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it might be. But I'll tell you this, pop time that we talk about, folks talk about a lot. His pop time is also pretty slow. He's in the 25th percentile of that. So it looks like, at least according to the numbers, the Reds should be able to run on him. And, even looking at like last season and stuff like that, his caught stealing, I'm trying to look at it here. 2023. Yeah, his pop time has always kind of been slow. So the Reds should be able to run in this series. Hopefully they get on base. That's another thing. We talked about they're 15th in the National League, last in the National League in batting average. They're 14th in the National League in on base percentage. And really, with all the team speed that the Reds have, you just got to get on base. That's really all you got to do. And then once they start doing that, they're going to start scoring runs in bunches, even more so than they already are, because they're still currently averaging over 5 runs a game, having the lowest batting average in the National League and the second lowest on base percentage in the National League. That blows my mind. How can you average over 5 runs a game when you're not hitting as well as they are?
All right, let's go to this, Jeff. Is Brandon Williamson on assignment yet? At some point, I feel like he's going to be a big contributor.
Not that I've seen.
All right, according to Eeyore Whitmire over at the Cincinnati Inquirer, he's going to make a start on May 9th.
How long did it take you to come up with that one, Eeyore Whitmire?
Oh, I've been sitting on that one for just the right opportunity to use it. And
he's had some good ones, though.
Today was the day.
He's had some good articles here recently, like talking about how good the Reds pitching is and things like that. Like, I think the fact that he came in and he was trying to be, he might have been trying to be pessimistic, but he was definitely being realistic. Nobody wanted to hear realism this spring training, and quite frankly, neither did we. And I think that's because whenever he started doing that, it felt like he was trying to pour cold water on everything. And I don't think he was trying to pour cold water on the Reds, but that's just how it came off.
Right. All right.
But no, it's good to hear that he's on rehab. He's about to be on rehab. TJ Friedel's on rehab. Alex Young's on rehab. The Reds are starting to get healthy now, and that's the big thing. Like, they haven't hit their stride. And I think when it comes to the 162 game season, I don't think you want to have hit your stride by this point. I mean, just ask the Pirates, who had the April of the century last year. Where'd they finish? The Reds were ahead of them. So, I mean,
world champions of April.
Hang around 500, then hit a summer just boom, and you're good. That's what the Reds need to do.
All right, I'm looking for a couple more to get us out of here, Jeff. Scott wants to know if Ford can play first base.
That's all he.
I don't know if
it's all he can do. It's first base and DH. Yeah,
that's it. That is it. Not going to see him patrolling the outfield anytime soon.
We have jokingly said that we kind of hope Mike Ford gets a couple game used jerseys in there, because then we'll be able to grab them over at Reds Fest because they'll fit.
This comes up from time to time in the comments, and it's not Reds related, but it just still holds a special place in my heart. So I want to see if maybe you have an answer to this, because Grant's asking about our good buddy Joey Votto still being injured over in the Toronto organization. Have you heard any updates or talked to the Toronto Locked On guys about Joey's potential to make back to the majors?
Not really been any updates on him, and that's kind of the big bummer, right? Like, he has not got going yet, and that was the hardest part about any sort of analysis that involved Joseph Daniel Votto over the offseason, is that when we were having the discussions of should the Reds bring back Joey Votto or not, the hardest part about that discussion was, what's the health going to look like? Because the last couple of years, the health has not been good. And it's not as if you're bringing him back and he's a platoon guy and you can play him every other day or something like that, because he just hasn't been that healthy. And the fact that he got injured after he hit the home run in spring training for the Blue Jays was just more of a dose of reality that you're just like, man, like, you were kind of hoping. I was hoping anyway. Like, I know there would have been people that would have taken it and turned it into some sort of negative thing, but I was hoping that he would go to Toronto and have some sort of resurgence and just add to his Hall of Fame resume and stuff like that. And it feels like it's not going to get there because of the injuries. So no, there's been no update on him, and I hope that there is soon, but as of right now, no.
He was posting on Twitter X yesterday. There was I don't know if it was the MLB account. Somebody shared video of him in the booth with Sadak and Larkin from last year and said, we need to get Joey Votto back in the booth. That was the tag on the video clip. And Joey replied to that and said, you spelled box wrong. So, maybe Joey is still looking to get some big league
sense of humor there. Yeah.
Get some big league at bats this year.
Carrie says TJ Antone sounded pretty good in the box the other day too. I like that.
In the booth.
Yep. See, Joey Votto subliminally.
Yeah. There you go. Carrie says heavy use of the Orioles lefties yesterday against the Yankees. It's got to help the Reds. Got to keep that up, right?
I could see this being a little bit of a series where, I'm not saying that the Orioles are going to run out their B squad, but they probably won't run it as tightly as they did. They just came off 4 games with the Yankees, and they won 3 of 4, by the way. So maybe they're riding high, maybe a little bit of a good series hangover here in Cincinnati for the Reds. But yeah, it's gotta work for them. Yeah.
Mr. E says Antone was outstanding in the booth.
Loved his optimism too. About his own situation.
Joseph, who I believe is Canadian, if my memory serves me correctly, wants to know if we're heading to Toronto, Jeff. I'm not heading to Toronto. I have worn out my my airline travel this year, and many more trips to come back to Cincinnati. Man, I'm racking them up. But no, Toronto is not on my list. Jeff is much closer to Toronto than I am.
Yeah, the plan, not right now. Got some other stuff going on this year, but yeah, one day.
All right. I don't know. What else you guys want to talk about? Anything pressing? Last chance to get it into the comments here before we get out of here. If I missed one along the way that you really want us to talk about, I want to talk about this. Mr. E. J.R. House is an underrated coach on this team. J.R. House fills a role that you simply can't win at. If you're good at being a third base coach, or not even good at being a third base coach, you guys don't get thrown out and nobody knows who you are, and that's fine. Has J.R. House gotten some guys thrown out from time to time? Yeah. And that's okay. I like being aggressive. I think the part of J.R. House's role with this team that people undervalue is the work he puts in with the catchers and what he's been able to get out of Tyler Stevenson and Luke Maile. Tyler Stevenson has never been a world beater defensively. Like, that's never been, when he was coming up through the organization, it wasn't, well, the Reds have a future Gold Glove catcher on their hands, folks. He's going to be something. Nobody ever said that. And yet he is improving with each season behind the plate. Still a work in progress, but improving. I like the work that J.R. House has done with the catchers.
So it's interesting. You mentioned the work that he's done with them last year. We made a little bit about this. I don't know that we made much about this, but we made a little bit about this. The fact that Stevenson was not very good at framing last year. There were like only 2 other catchers that were worse at framing than Tyler Stevenson was. This year, that meter on Baseball Savant is actually red, Steve. Actually, it's kind of purple, but he's in the 71 percentile. He's positive. His catching, his framing value is in the positive, where last year was in the big time negative. So that has definitely got to be shouted out. That's J.R. House, man. That's J.R. House working with him. And Stevenson's always been a good catcher when it comes to like blocking balls in the dirt and stuff like that. He continues to be that this year. The one thing that he still needs to work on is so I said this about Adley Rutschman, the caught stealing above average isn't great. And the pop time's not great for Tyler Stevenson, but it hasn't been in his career. Pop time, by the way, the definition of that is, the pop in the catcher's mitt to the pop in the second baseman's mitt or third baseman, wherever he's throwing it to. And that time's pretty slow compared to other catchers. So, but yeah, the framing has gotten a lot better this year.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to throw you a bone here, and I have absolutely nothing to say about this. So I'm going to give you this, and then you can wrap up after you answer. Scott Campbell says, non-Reds related, X-Men 97 is great.
I've started it, first 2 episodes, not going to lie, it sucks you in. And I was having to catch myself because I had some other stuff to do, and I was watching both episodes, and I was like, "Ooh, let's watch 3. Let's binge watch everything that they got going on." Storytelling's great. Love what they're doing with it. Very much into where everything seems to be heading after 2 episodes. So very excited about that. I also just, speaking of shows, also just finished Bad Batch. Still think it's firmly behind Clone Wars and Rebels as far as animated Star Wars goes, but I think that it's a very solid show. Like Clone Wars and Rebels had this thing where the endings tugged at your heartstrings. Bad Batch didn't do that. But also Bad Batch didn't need to do that because the entire storyline was based on clones going through the formation of the Empire, and there's quite a bit to be had there. Anyway, I see the smile. I know.
And with that, Jeff Carr is undefeated at working Star Wars into an episode, and that is where we're going to wrap up this edition of the show. Thanks, guys, for joining us live on this edition of Locked On Reds. Make sure you click those subscribe buttons, the like buttons, click all the buttons, guys. Come on. We need you to click the buttons. Push the show out to the masses. Let's build up this audience. We love talking Reds baseball with you, and we want to talk Reds baseball with all of the Reds fans out there. Once they get here, Jeff, what can they expect to find?
They can expect us to be locked in every pitch. They can expect us to be locked in any rumor that's happening as we get closer and closer to trade season, because we will be locked on Reds every single day. And of course, I'm going to work Star Wars into it. Tomorrow's May the 4th, man. May the 4th be with you.